Shalom, shalom, shalom. How's everybody doing this evening? Once again, we thank you for joining us with the Taking a Deeper Look podcast. It's the pesky one, your brother, your favorite little brother, aka Hukanan Ben Yah. I'm here to join you on a rolling dolo tonight. I was not able to get a confirmation from our dear brother Tony Crenshaw. Along with he may be in the chat, and if he's in the chat, definitely going to invite him up. But some things came up. I talked to my brother Torrey JP, had a long conversation yesterday. We talked about 4 hours, but some things came up with him today, and so he's not with us. And then Mama Ray, he's going to be in the audience. But with that being said, it was going to be me. He was going to be in our. He may join us because I don't think he know that the brothers were not going to be here. But with that being said, please like, share, subscribe, comment, interact in the chat. It is the pesky one, rolling dolo, rolling by himself, but yet we hope to definitely still bring some information to you. I got some things lined up. Definitely looking forward to bringing them out. Again, shout out to, I see Sister Tracy up in the chat, aka Sister Soldier. How you doing this evening, Sister Soldier? I see my brother definitely from another mother. Definitely, man, I love that. I love that brother. I love that brother with my life. Mama Ray, my brother Eugene Copeland Jr. Shout out to my brother Agent Z, aka the governor, aka the reluctant leader. The reluctant leader. What I mean by that is that's the most humble brother I know. He's in a leadership role, and he was not one who sought it, but it sought him. And so, that being said, we're going to get into this. So, because I'm rolling dolo, you know I'm a roll, family. You know how I'm a roll. Got to pull a tune up real quick. I got some things lined up, but I definitely got to have my background because I'm rolling dolo. And if I'm rolling dolo, I'm gonna do it like this. I like this new sound. This one right here. I'm gonna keep it low. I keep it on 12 for the 12 tribes, but I got to have the sound in the background. That being said, we talked about a lot these past few weeks. We talked about a lot these past 2 weeks. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Sister Tracy. I'm definitely going to do this. I'm definitely going to take my time. And I'm definitely going to do this thing. But I want to lay the context because we talked a lot. The first time that we talked about this, when we talk about the heart of the fathers, let me go to the text. I'm going to share my screen once I pull up the text, and I'm going to be coming out of the LSB version. I won't be breaking these scriptures down because we've already dealt with them. So I'm just going to bring them up as a reminder because I always like a spiritual context behind why it is that we say what we say before we get into it. So let me see here. How do I do what my brother is? Just let me try that. I don't know if that's that. Give me a sec. I'm assuming because I'm getting interaction in the chat that I can be heard. Let me see. Is that it? I found it. Okay. It's on the banners. Okay. But let me go ahead and do this. Let's get into this. The context behind everything that we're talking about. Let me share the screen. Amen. My dear Sister Tracy, man, she bring the energy in the chat. I love it. We're gonna have to have something with the sisters. I want to hear the sisters talk about some of these matters. I know for some of my super brews out there, we're not saying they usurping authority, but the sisters that we deal with, they know these scriptures, they know the word. They probably know more scriptures than most of you all. So yeah, I said that. I'm saying that. So that being said, I definitely want to have a subject, and maybe even on this particular subject, but a subject where we can interact with the sisters and get their perspective. But with that being said, here is the first verse or the main verses that sparked these last three taking a deeper looks, or this third taking a deeper look. Malachi 4, verses 4 through 6, and it says, remember Remember the law of Moses, my servant, even the statutes and judgments which I commanded him in Horeb for all Israel. Behold, I am going to send you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahweh. And he will turn the hearts of the father. So before that day comes, before the father come and layeth the smack down, before the main father come and layeth the smack down, the word says he's going to turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the land, devoting it to destruction. So that was the verse that was the primary premise behind what it is that we are to do. And it leads off with the first in verse 4, diverting us or telling us from a governmental standpoint, we got to get back to these laws, statutes, and commandments that our Father gave us. That's what he says. Because the end result, if we don't go back to it, is the last word in this chapter, or the last phrase. He's going to devote the land or us to destruction. So if he don't see us being obedient to his will, his way, he coming to lay the smack down. Let me give you another verse. And I'm just giving a little bit more context, because we're talking about the state of our people, the state of our nation, and why it's important that we repent. Let me get to Hosea. These are familiar verses, and we talked about these the last 4, so I'm not trying to elaborate. I'm just laying the background, the context, as we get into some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. With that being said, I forgot to put, hold on, what's going on here? Let me go ahead and shout out to my sister, Takia Targaryen. Love you, girl. Let me see here. What's going on? I forgot to put that on repeat. Like, why I don't hear my... There we go. Let me go back to my screen. So we go. Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because I have rejected knowledge. I reject you from ministering. You won't be able to serve me as my priest. Now remember, Exodus 19 verses 3 through I think 6. You can start at verse 3 in there. Matter of fact, you read the rest of that chapter. But he said, you will be a kingdom of priests unto me. So if we're a kingdom of priests unto him, we're supposed to be conveying his government, not only to each other, but the rest of the world are to see us walking in the way and the government. He said we will be a kingdom of priests. But since we have forgotten the law, it's amazing. He say law, but when we look at law, we think religion. But this law right here that he's talking about, everybody else, every other country, you go to Nigeria, you go to Colombia, you go to Germany, you go to France, you go everywhere, the United States, they got Bill of Rights and amendments. We call those laws. But when we look at the laws in the text, we somehow equate that with religion. Go figure. Just want to throw that nugget out there to you. It says, since you have forgotten the law of your God, I myself also will forget your children. So because we're not teaching our children or demonstrating our children or showing our children the ways of the Most High, he said, I will forget your children. Remember, he said, according to Psalms 1 and 6, I only know the way of the righteous. So it's either my way or no way. He only recognizes one way. Every other way, he don't even see it. And so if our children are walking in those ways that are not according to his law, he said, man, your children are in a forgotten place because we have rejected his law. Context. Also, last context of a verse. I think it was Psalms 19, not 19, I think it was 9, Psalms 9, verses 1 through 7. I think it was just 17. Let me see. Verse 17. And it says, excuse me, and it says, the wicked will return to Sheol, even all nations who forget the Most High. So a nation that's forgetting this most high, the most high is returned to the grave, is dead, is turned into hell. So we're talking about the condition of us as a people, the condition of us as a nation. And so there were many things that we were getting into or wanting to talk about. And my brother asked an awesome question after the first go round when we went through all these scriptures and everything that we talked about. One of the things that we wanted to get into was the financial impact or the lack thereof of the father in the home. So in other words, is it truly beneficial? Is it truly beneficial to have the father in the home? Because the word emphatically states we want to turn the world, the heart of the father to the children and the children to the father. But yet, why is that so important? Why does it matter? What difference does it make? Because I got a sister. I ain't gonna put her out there like that. But I got a few sisters. I know a few sisters that are fantastic mothers, have done the best they can with raising their children as single mothers, trying to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Most High, teach them the ways of the Most High. But yet, the word is talking about specifically turning the hearts of the fathers to the children. Why is that so important? That's not to denote that a mom is not capable. We look up the Hebrew word for father, or it's Abba. Abba, it means strong house. House provides protection, provides shelter, provides boundaries. But also in that house, especially when there's a mother in the house, the mother, Ima, it means strong liquid. What is that strong liquid? In other words, the mother is the glue to the house. What is the mom gluing together? Well, when you look up the Hebrew for the children, it's bang or bang, and it means continuing the house. So the children continue what the strong father started, and the mother is the one that makes sure that the lesson or the understanding is solidified. So what has happened is, for whatever reason, over the years, that family unit that the father put together for the beginning, that's been destroyed, especially in the so-called black community. I say so-called because I believe we are the people of the book, the Israelites. And so when you hear me talk tonight, I'm not talking from a standpoint of Israelite supremacy. I'm not talking from a standpoint of it's us against anybody else and we hate everybody else. No, I'm not talking about that, because I always believe this is why I stand. This is why I stand with this. It's our responsibility. The word says in Romans 8, the earth moans and groans in travail, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. And so the condition of the world is because we haven't taken our place as walking with our Father and showing the rest of the world the righteous way of the Father. And so when we look at this, there is some financial implications as to the family structure. And when we were talking last week with the brothers, our brother Torre JP, he was talking about the need for us to be able to change the way we speak, that we will eat the fruit of our lips. And he's big on us as a people and as a nation. That's why I wish he was on tonight, because one verse that stands out to me, matter of fact, let me go to it again. I probably should chant it. Let me go to, I think it's John 3. Let me see. I think it's 3rd John. I think it's verse 2. Let me share it real quick. Now come back. Let me show this verse. This is the standpoint in which he was talking about. Him and brother Crenshaw were talking. I thought the dialogue was excellent, and there are some financial implications to this. But it says, "Beloved, I pray that in all respects that you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers." So this is what John is saying to the people that he wrote this letter to, that I pray that you prosper even as your soul prosper and be in good health. So there are benefits to walking in relationship. walking in agreement, walking in covenant with the Most High. I'm not trying to teach a prosperity message or anything like that. I'm just trying to get us to recognize what the Most High put together from the beginning. It is important for us to abide by that, because a lot of what has happened or a lot of what has gone on has directly impacted or affected us. And so, based on our family background, based on the call, based on the structure, let me stop sharing. What has happened is we've suffered immensely as a people, as a nation, because we've gotten away from what the Father started. He said, shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they become one. And he commanded us to be fruitful and multiply. It was never meant for it to be Adam and Cain and Abel and Seth, or Eve, Cain, Abel and Seth. It was always meant to be Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, and Seth. Now, we can talk about Cain. Cain did some bug out stuff. We understand that. But what we're talking about is what the Most High put together. And it was supposed to be the strong house with the strong liquid to make a continued seed. And that's what we're talking about. So before we go any further, I want you guys, if you guys could bear with me, fair use. It's a 20-minute video. It's going to summarize and talk about a lot of what we've been talking about a few weeks ago, and also what we were talking about last week, and hopefully tie it into even what we talk about a little bit more today. I think it gives us some historical context, some historical insight on what it is that we're dealing with, what it is that we're facing, and what needs to be corrected. So with that being said, let me go ahead and pause the sounds here. Let me go ahead and play this for the family. Let me share my screen. Fair use. This is for educational purposes only. Like I said, the goal here is not to promote so-called Black supremacy or anything like that. It's to make us aware, because there's a need to get back to what the Father has commanded us. Can you see my screen, chat? If you can, give me a 7 in the chat if you can see the screen. Okay, I see a 7. Good. Okay. Let me go ahead.
Fathers have left home in order for their children to get meat and bread. There are so many concerned about removing. Ultimately, we're concerned about a guaranteed annual income. And the other thing I think it is very necessary to say is that everybody's on welfare in this country. And when it comes to Black people and poor people, we just call it something else. When it's for white people and rich, we call it subsidies.
It's no secret, fatherless households are more common in the Black community. A survey from the American Consensus Institution revealed that 67% of Black children under 18 in the US live in homes without fathers. This is a stark contrast to white children, as only 24% of them live in fatherless homes. But it wasn't always like that. The Black families survived generations of open racism, widespread poverty, and slavery. They lived through segregation and violence, and strong family bonds used to be the norm.
As of 1960, 2/3 of all Black American children were living with both parents. That declined over the years until only 1/3 were living with both parents in 1995. So it's not the legacy of slavery that destroys the African American family.
It's the legacy of the welfare state.
Between 1890 and 1950, the marriage rate was much higher among Black women than white women. A fraction of Black children lived in homes without their fathers. But everything changed with the expansion of the welfare state. It divided the household and created a dependency on welfare. This kind of reminds me of what President Reagan said.
I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
So, what happened? What's the mechanism? Here is a detailed look at how the welfare state played a role in the dissolving of the family structure over the years. People say that the breakdown of traditional family units, family structures, is a byproduct of Black poverty, not just because there is no man to support the family financially, but also because women tend to earn less than men on average. Of course, the connection between the two is there, but it goes deeper than that. Welfare was a mean little business. It was designed to get people by in a pinch. Public assistance programs, like welfare entitlements, have been a part of American culture since the 1940s. Unfortunately, like in many other aspects of government institutions, Black Americans were left out. In time, Black people could also get financial support, but it wasn't easy. Mothers who applied for checks had to let social workers inspect their homes to see if their conditions were suitable for welfare. These workers also had to make sure no man was living in the house. But even if they qualified for support, the amount they received was meager and not enough to build a stable life. In the early 1960s, welfare was not yet common, even in the most impoverished Black communities. In the decade that followed, the number of Black people on welfare went up by 169%. They further increased by 30% from 1970 to 1975. In 1972, New York City, almost 1 out of every 6 residents was on welfare. A major portion of these households were Black. Although Black people were only around a tenth of all Americans, they made up almost 50% of all welfare recipients by the late 70s. A recent UNICEF report showed that many children under 18 in America struggle financially, and African American children are nearly 4 times more likely to be in poverty than white children. Though the number of families receiving cash assistance has decreased since 1996, child poverty rates for Black children in the US remain high. This outcome is not by accident. I studied the evolution of social welfare policies in the US from the New Deal to the 1996 reforms and found that these policies have been discriminatory from the start. And a lot of people can confess to that. This led many Black families to fall into cultural and economic ruin. In a short period, healthy Black people started relying on government assistance to achieve some level of normalcy. But within the city slums, that normalcy was impossible to get. Black children barely knew their fathers, and most were raised by unemployed and unmarried mothers stuck in a cycle of poverty and modest paychecks. This marked a significant shift in Black American history. The consequences were severe for the next generation. Let's start with the Social Security Act of 1935. It was introduced during Franklin Roosevelt's administration. It was designed to create the safety net in the country, safeguarding families from losing their income. It was viewed as a significant part of New Deal reform and paved the way for federal protections in the future, such as the Affordable Care Act and Medicare. This policy had 2 main parts. The first part had social insurance programs that provided financial support to dependents of deceased or incapacitated workers and Social Security for retired older Americans. The second part comprised means-tested public assistance programs, initially known as Aid to Dependent Children and later renamed Aid to Families with Dependent Children. In 1962, under the Kennedy administration, ideally, it was believed that as the overall quality of life in the country improved, more families could support themselves without needing financial assistance from the ADC program. Eventually, the ADC program would become unnecessary and gradually phase out on its own. But this posed a major problem for Black Americans. Like any other component of the New Deal, the origins of the Social Security Act were deeply rooted in racism. During the 1930s and 1940s, Black people had to deal with the widespread racial discrimination in the workplace. They held low-paying jobs, often paid in cash and off the books. This made them ineligible for social insurance programs. The ADC program was an extension of state-run programs that supported widowed mothers, but mostly benefited white widows. The states decided eligibility and need, and since the separate but equal doctrine was in place, Blacks were still excluded from fully participating. Jim Crow laws and the separate but equal doctrine led to a system with different services for whites and Blacks. But as we all know by now, they were far from equal. States made efforts to cut down ADC enrollment and costs. They proposed residency requirements to prevent Blacks from the South from qualifying for the program. In 1935, there was a hearing on a bill, and the NAACP, an organization that fights for civil rights, expressed their concerns. Southern politicians wanted to exclude agricultural and domestic workers from the bill. This meant that many Black workers couldn't get the support they needed. This exclusion would particularly affect Black sharecroppers and cash tenants, who were already struggling to make ends meet. Even though the NAACP was highly against it, the Social Security Act was approved. That's why 65% of African Americans nationwide were not eligible for benefits, and an even larger percentage of these Black families in the South were excluded from the program. In the 1950s and 60s, things got even worse for Black families. Welfare checks incentivized single-mother households, And there was one rule that ruined it all: the man in the house rule. Black families have long been the victims of income inequality and bad government policies. The irony, of course, is that conservatives pushed Black mothers to break their families to get welfare. Before 1968, many states and administrative agencies created and enforced the man in the house rule. This rule basically meant that if there is a working or healthy man in the house, the government can't help you. And they would go as far as to send welfare workers to visit the homes without warning to check if a man was present. If they found any evidence whatsoever, families lost their welfare benefits. Over the years, the welfare state started dissolving the family structure.
Fair use. I'm going to play the video. I just wanted to pause, put a break in it every now and then, so that way they won't try to flag us. But fair use, fair use. I hope you guys are finding this informative.
Slowly but surely, a man who can't get a decent job and provide a substantial income suddenly believes that his family is better off without him. So, if a man were to lose his job, he literally had to leave the house so his children could get government surplus peanut butter, beans, and cheese. On the other hand, if either the woman or the man, or both, were irresponsible, they faced no consequences for their actions. And it was the taxpayers who ended up paying for it. These things aren't exactly designed to keep the marriage intact. They are meant to divide people. The harm done to the children was massive. Many children experienced the hurt from broken families at such a young age. In 1960, just 33% of Black American children didn't live with two parents. But by 1988, that rate went up to 61%. In that time, the proportion of Black children born to single mothers rose from 23% to more than 60%. This is exactly why we can't judge government policies based on their ideals, but based on their results. And these results, well, left a ton of households fatherless. I mean, think about it. What would the result have been if this welfare policy had required the opposite of that both parents live in the same home and care for their children to receive government assistance? The welfare state did what slavery couldn't do. It broke families apart. And broken families fuel poverty. The structure of the family can influence the choices children make. For example, boys raised without their fathers are more likely to drop out of school, get violence, use drugs, or go to jail. Girls are more likely to have a child out of wedlock or engage in sexual activities at a very early age. These children are also more prone to mental health problems, which can affect them as adults. A psychology test detailed in Roy Baumeister and John Tierney's book, Willpower, showed that children from fatherless households were more likely to settle for a small prize straight away. In contrast, children with fathers present were more willing to wait for a bigger prize. Experts from the Northwestern Institute for Policy Research challenged that these effects are primarily due to dangerous neighborhoods or poor schools. They found that the direct effect of family structure itself played a more significant role. As marriage rates declined among the poor and working class in the US, the institution of marriage has remained strong among the wealthier population, with similar rates to those from 50 years ago. At the same time, the decrease in marriage among the working class has led to a significant rise in out-of-wedlock births, often to couples who are living together without being married. This happens because people view marriage as an ideal situation, but feel it is unachievable, yet they still want to have children. In the mid-1980s, the rates of fatherless households dramatically increased. Today, just 44% of Black children live with their fathers. Also, a lot more Black children are born outside of marriage. The rates of such cases went up from 24.5% in 1964 to 70.7% by 1994, which remains at a similar level today. Many people blame the expansion of welfare programs for the breakdown of Black families. Since 1935, people have had access to cash welfare, but this welfare was quite modest and not enough to cover any of the living expenses. With Johnson's Great Society, which began in 1964, welfare benefits became much more generous and controlled. When I mean controlled, I mean crazy.
Again, fair use, fair use. Remember, they brought up key things like family structure and things that we were talking about, trying to talk about a little bit last week. Again, I'm just breaking it up so that way they won't flag the page. Fair use.
The man in the house rule discouraged marriage because it provided welfare assistance to mothers if no man was living in the house. If a mother married an employed man, even one earning the minimum wage, it jeopardized her financial support. These benefits were huge. The Great Society programs offered a way out for low-income Black families. This could be why, in 1964, only 7% of American children were born out of wedlock, compared to the current rate of 40%. So basically, the government urged mothers to keep fathers out of the home and paid them well for doing so. Shifts in the labor market and deindustrialization greatly impacted job opportunities, especially for low-skilled workers. It hurt both whites and Black people, but Black communities were the most affected. Here's an example. Imagine a city like Detroit, where the manufacturing industry was the top employer, and many black men held manufacturing jobs. Here, in the 1970s, 56% of black men were in the manufacturing industry, but by 2000, it dropped to 26%. Over the years, technological advancements and economic shifts created a demand for skilled workers in other sectors, like healthcare or technology. These new jobs required a higher level of education and specialized skills. The problem was the lower level of education among black men on average. As jobs increasingly required education beyond high school, black men faced many challenges. This made it harder for them to adapt to the changing job market and find new employment in other industries. White men were better equipped to handle the changing job market. They had higher education and a greater chance of securing well-paid jobs in emerging industries. Then there was the 90s gear change. In the late 1990s, efforts to reform the AFDC program took on more subtle forms of racism. Critics claimed that the program encouraged out-of-wedlock births, irresponsible fatherhood, and dependency across generations. During this time, there was a lot of public concern about the cost of welfare programs. Some people believed that the programs contributed to rising taxes and national debt. It tapped into public fears and created a seriously negative perception of people who received welfare. There were a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes about those who lived in poverty. So, the reform bill that was eventually passed replaced the AFDC with TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. The new bill imposed stricter work requirements, expecting single mothers to find work within 2 years of receiving benefits. There was also a 5-year limit on receiving benefits. To promote traditional family values, teenage mothers didn't receive benefits. But that was not all. If a father were to fall behind on child support payments, they could face threats of imprisonment. The bill restricted the use of federally funded TANF for certain groups of immigrants. There were also eligibility limitations on Medicaid, food stamps, and supplementary Social Security income, SSI. These measures were just too harsh. They made it difficult for families in need to get proper financial support. Instead of addressing the root of poverty and creating new employment opportunities, it just punished those who already struggled financially. Well, today, modern problems require new solutions. According to Forbes, the economic status of Black Americans is still far behind compared to white people in terms of stock ownership, net worth, income, home ownership, and other metrics. In the United States, Black workers earn about 30% less than white workers. Almost 50% of Black workers are working in retail, food services, healthcare, and accommodation, and a huge chunk of these workers are doing lower paying services. Imagine getting paid more than 40% less than white men for doing the exact same job. If you are a Black woman in the US, this is more likely to happen. In 2020, Black women earned around 58% of what white men earned on average. Similar to Latinas and Native women, Black women face a much more significant pay gap compared to all women. This is because they face both racism and sexism in the workplace. Today, the Social Security program is a backbone for many Black families. It protects them through disability, retirement, or death. The program is crucial because African Americans often lack financial resources and have higher disability rates. The program is meant to help those who earn low income get benefits. Those who heavily rely on Social Security are older Black people with lower lifetime earnings and fewer pension benefits. For example, in 2017, 35% of married and 58% of unmarried older Black people received 90% or more of their income from Social Security. Despite its importance, Black Americans still benefit less overall from the program because of the ongoing pay disparities and shorter life expectancies. These factors result in lower lifetime earnings and, in turn, reduce the total benefits received from Social Security. In 2005, President George W. Bush wanted to make some changes and planned to privatize the program. But the NAACP responded with a nationwide campaign called SOS, Save Our Social Security, and partnered with the Congressional Black to keep the program safe. It worked. Social Security is still an important support system for countless families. Unfortunately, our country has made very few efforts to reduce the disparities in wealth and income between Black and white households. Despite laws against pay discrimination, Black men earn 83 cents and Black women earn 62 cents for every dollar earned by white men. Also, practices like redlining or housing discrimination have made it nearly impossible or much less profitable for Black families to own homes. These structural barriers create fewer opportunities for Black people to accumulate wealth and save for retirement. When the pandemic hit, Social Security became even more critical. Many Black adults lost jobs, and many small businesses were forced to close. The coronavirus made it very difficult to keep up with mortgage or rental payments. The thing is, today, More Black Americans are more likely to enter a church to go to a funeral than to celebrate a wedding. Fatherless homes, declining marriage rates, and high divorce rates are challenging the Black community to the core. Imagine as a young child living in poverty with a single mother in a poor and drug-infested neighborhood. Over the years, you would have witnessed how this would impact your chances of success, like finishing high school and getting a good job. Because of this, many Black children are raised with little expectations or a sense of hope. Now, some might argue that it takes a village to raise a kid, but in reality, the urban public housing village is drenched in toxic influences like violence, drugs, and bad role models. And in that village, fatherless boys are left alone to figure out what it takes to be a man. So, where do they look? To one another. And in many cases, they turn to gangs and the streets. Girls' lives, too, are deeply damaged in fatherless households. Without a father figure, young girls can experience psychological and emotional challenges. They can have lower self-esteem and struggle to form healthy relationships with men. Teen pregnancy is a common problem. They can also struggle with economic hardships and poor academic performance. For things to change, we need to acknowledge that the absence of Black men is damaging countless households. To fill this void, it is essential to reunite fathers with their children, but also to teach the younger generation the value of family structures. But this is something that will take time and a lot of effort. All in all, the US welfare system is a clear reflection of its economic policies and the nation's long history of racism. From the very beginning, the policy excluded Black Americans who were already struggling financially. The man in the house rule only made things worse, which greatly impacted Black households. The expansion of welfare led to a decrease in fathers' involvement in raising their children, leaving mothers to struggle alone in jobless poverty. This created a new reality for poor Blacks, where work became optional, fathers were rare, and dysfunction became common. The lack of family loyalty and work ethic led to a new oppositional racial outlook among young Black males who often resorted to crime. Now, years later, the impact of the rule can still be felt. A lot of Black children have grown up without a father, and they can easily go astray. The situation is hard for overworked and exhausted single mothers. The more children they had, the harder it was to get a job. I just want to point out the brutal reality that led to such circumstances. The welfare culture discouraged individual responsibility. It pushed people to make hard choices, which damaged their families and put everyone involved in challenging positions. This is a reality that many now have to live with. If you enjoyed this documentary, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We aren't just telling stories, we're changing lives and waking the culture up. The video on the screen shares why they are banning Black history in schools. Click on it now to watch. It will change your perspective on our history.
Shalom, 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 Chris. Hey, Jay. Hey, Jay. Good to see you, Jalen. See, some people came into the chat while we were looking at the video. Yeah, so let me go back. Hold on. Gotta cue my flow real quick. Give me. So when we talk about what Malachi 4 and 6 was talking about, we see in real time natural implications. And it's interesting because even in that video, it noted that from about the 60s, I know that Brother Pride, we were talking about it even last night, where we were talking about the implications of the Civil Rights Act and how the Civil Rights Act it didn't have the best impact on the family. And so you're seeing where no man in the home, like I said, I know personally, it was suggested to my wife for me not to be in the home to get aid and relief and things of that nature. And so what you're talking about is the system. It may appear like an angel of light, but ultimately it's not, systemically for the family. And so you see it not only impacting so-called Black families, but it's impacting so-called white families and families in general, where, when you talk about the home or family structure, why family structure is so important, whether it's you in a white home, you in a Black home, we definitely see it played out real time in the Black family, where almost 60% even today still grow up in a single parent home. And so it's interesting because I was talking to Brother Pride, and then talking to Brother Pride, we were talking about the fact that, our ancestors, the family that, the family members that came over, whether they were here indigenously whether they came over on the boat ride, the infamous boat ride or whatever, you want to call it. The bottom line is they came over here, we were over here, went through the slavery, went through the Jim Crow and carpetbagging, went through the Great Depression. But one thing that was always had, they went through World War I, World War II. But one thing that was always had was the fact that the family structure was intact. My kids have said to me personally, because we face some challenges, still face some challenges. But one thing that my kids have always said and maintained to me personally, the fact that we're still together makes it easier to go through. So the fact that the family dynamic is still intact gives us strength to overcome the challenges that we may face day to day. But that's what the Father said. He said that what I put together, let no man put asunder. And it wasn't just talking about individual marriages, individual relationships. What we're talking about is the structure of the family and how important that structure of the family is. How important that is. And so one thing that I wanted to get into with Brother Pride, and I may not be able to elaborate on it because I think that's his area of expertise, but I do kind of want to touch on it just a little bit, because one thing that, and you can look this up, one thing that's a misconception or misnomer is DEI. And people looked at DEI, and we, as so-called Black people, were made the face of DEI. To the point, the young man that got, there's stories about how he got unalived, but Charlie Kirk, he had a lot of narrative about that. Shout out to my young people. We had a lovely conversation about Charlie Kirk, and I love their spirit about it because they were not ill-informed. But yes, Sister Tracy already on it. DEI was not for us. We were not the ones that benefited most from DEI. You got to understand, when you look at the Civil Rights Bill, shout out to Sister BJ in the chat. How you doing, Sister BJ? When you look at the Civil Rights Bill, it may have been something that was implemented off of our fight, the struggle, the sit-ins and everything else that they was doing, the marching we shall overcome, the hymns that we were singing, all the stuff that we was fighting for, whatever the NAACP was doing or things that they were quote unquote fighting for. But what it did was it opened the door for other so-called minority groups. Because when you look at the majority is usually looked at as so-called white men. But the other minority groups, or the other people that were under that minority group, so when you look at the income disparity, that income disparity that they talked about even in this video, and you track it from the 1960s to today, it's not talking about so-called white people as a whole. And I say so-called white people because to me those constructs, they mess up the waters. Sister Tracy is on game. But with that being said, they muddy the waters. But when you look at this country, so-called white men make the most money. Underneath that, so-called Black men. Underneath that, so-called white women. And then underneath that, so-called Black women. I think, if I remember my research, I looked up a whole bunch of stuff. I think so-called Black women, because their pursuits of education and things had jumped over, I think it was white women. But at the same time, I could be off. I looked up a lot of information. So if I'm off on that, forgive me. I'm not trying to deceive anybody or put any false information out there. That's not my intent. And I'm not here to talk about race from a standpoint of trying to divide us. I'm just trying to get us to see how important our family structure is. Because even when you look at that, through all those years, from slavery to Jim Crow, to the carpetbagging, to the Great Depression, World War I and World War II, the family structure was intact. And when the family structure was intact, despite the fact that so-called Black men and so-called Black women didn't make what the white households made, One thing that was still good was the families were still intact. And with the families were still intact, you still had children who were pursuing education. You still had children who were functioning citizens. You didn't have a lot of the foolishness that we see today. But what has happened is somehow things happen. The man ends up out of the house. There was a couple wars during that time. Not only that, but again, you saw in the video the job market. But back to my point, when the DEI was started, Sister Tracy's on. If you see a comment in the chat, white women were the one that benefited from that. That wasn't something that benefited the so-called Black family, but yet we were made the face of it. But in spite of the economic disparity, the issues in the so-called Black community were not as such until the structure of the family got destroyed. And when the structure of the family got destroyed, that's when you started seeing more incarcerated so-called Black people. That's when you started seeing more of sexually promiscuous ways, and it went up more. Why? Because there's a presence that's in the home. There's a way that maybe, dad moves that. I said, just speaking from my house, my kids put their halos on their head when I walked in the door. I'm not saying that I had bad kids, but I used to call the house, and and I would hear my kids just hollering and screaming in the background. And I would tell my wife, use me. Your dad hears you, and they would get quiet. And the reason why they would get quiet is not that we didn't let our kids play. We had very expressive kids. Matter of fact, we used to invite, in our ministry, we would invite the other parents to bring the kids over. You want to wear your kids out? Bring them over and let them play with my kids. And the kids would literally be passed out on the way to the car from our house. Our kids played hard with their cousins. I mean, when they played. We had this finished basement. When we lived in Canton, we had this finished basement, nice floor, the whole 9 yards. And we had all kinds of stuff down there. I mean, like ice hockey games and ballroom thing. And I mean, all little electronic stuff. So when the kids went down there, all you just heard was yelling and screaming. I would peek down just to make sure everybody was okay, no injuries. But they played. They would come up for a little snack or whatever. Aunt Tamika would hook them up with a little snack, but then they would go right back downstairs in that basement and play. So then now, by the time the parents come and get their kids, they walk from the house to the car, they was already asleep. They passed out. But I'm saying all that to say this. What it did was, it was a provision of structure. It was a provision of opportunity for our kids to interact and have fun. So we didn't have one of those households that even though dad was in the house, that we couldn't play. They have fun. But when you talk about the family structure is so important because the roles of each person in the family, the dad provides a strong house. And in dad providing a strong house, the mom is the strong liquid, or quote unquote, the glue. So now the values that dad is trying to push, or the values that dad is trying to enforce in the house, now mom backs those values, she supports those values, and now the kids continue those values. They continue the house. This is what the Most High had in mind when he developed family. And he said, what he put together, let no man put asunder. And so when we talk about what Brother Jay was talking about, last week, he had made a comment, not last week, but the week before. He had made a comment about desegregation versus integration. And I chuckled. And the reason why I chuckle is because if anybody's seen my Facebook page, every now and then, to me, like when they talk about DEI or they talk about cutting this program or that program, I'm not one of those who blinks. And the reason why I'm not one of those who blinks is the word says, greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. And sometimes I believe that the Most High will move upon those that are in leadership, governors, officials, those mountains, those hills. I believe that he moves those because we become too dependent upon them. And because we become too dependent upon them, he's cutting the umbilical cord. Why? Because he said, it's not by might nor by power, but by his spirit. He said, I put in you both to will and to do my good pleasure. In other words, there's plenty enough in us by the power of the Most High that He's given us requisite talents, requisite skills, requisite understanding that we can go back to the days of when they would barter, trade. You know, you may have this textile skill. The brother over here may have this skill with fishing and hunting. Can I get some iron for a few scraps of food or something to that effect? Let's go back to bartering and trading. In other words, everybody has enough that if this current system, which I do believe is going to fall, then me and my brother may do a deeper look on that coming real soon. But that we've talked about some stuff. But with that being said, there's enough in us that by the power of the Most High, we didn't need anything like DEI. We didn't need anything like TANF or when they used to call it AFDC or ADC. But the point of the matter is we've gotten so conditioned to, well, what am I going to do without my benefits? Or what am I going to do when they cut my housing? But the Most High is like, who am I? He said, that's why he said, I am that I am. But it comes with us walking in obedience to him. Like I said, from the time of slavery to the time of the 1940s going into the 50s, the family survived. The family was together. So the only issue that we needed to fight for, and this is what Brother Pride said, when you talk about desegregation and integration, was the desegregation. And so I asked him last week, and we talked about it even a little bit more last night. I asked him about the desegregation piece. And what he was talking about when we were talking about desegregation was equity, equality. And that's honestly, that's always been my argument. Listen, I have no problem if you don't like me because of the color of my skin. We all understand that green moves around here. My thing is, afford me the opportunity to be able to do what you did. You tell me to pull myself up by my own bootstraps, fine. I don't want to hear about some random chick that looked like you that supposedly got raped, touched, and she didn't get touched. But that comes up, and then all of a sudden you running in and you burning down what I built. You know, we talked about we are very, very well aware of what's happening in Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, several thriving communities that despite the fact that we had Jim Crow, despite the fact that we had to do carpetbagging, despite the fact that there was World War I and World War II and Great Depressions and all this other stuff, and the family stayed together, one of those things was we have more thriving Black communities. And you know what's interesting? Our Black communities wasn't as such that you couldn't be someone of a different nation and didn't have access. We wasn't doing a separate but unequal, or because you came to our nation. You came to our stores. We wasn't saying, yo, you can't shop here. Your money was green, whether you was white, whether you was Asian, whether you was Hispanic. We were serving everybody. So we wasn't denying you services. We're like that now. But afford me the opportunity when you talk about desegregation, the same thing that you would expect for your business, give us that or allow us to have that. If I farm, I don't need you burning down my crops or poisoning my crops. Give us that same opportunity. Give us that equity. Listen, bottom line is, I would never deny you my services because you don't look like me on the outside. But at the same time, don't deny me the right to build if you're going to say to me, do it on your own strength, on your own merit. I would love to do that. And I would love to do that unencumbered. I would love to do that without you finding some reason to be covetous, to be envious, and to come over and burn my work down. Because that's the history. That's what happens. some random chick gets assaulted, even though she didn't get assaulted, and you run through and you destroy my work. You unalive my people. You unalive my family. This is the history. So when they were marching and they're fighting for equality and things of that nature, that's what was going on. Now, where things went overboard at is now when you talk about integration. Because now what's going on is, okay, I want to now go to your schools. I want to drink from your same drinking fountains. I want to eat in your restaurants. If you don't want me there, I need to have some chutzpah about myself to be fine. You know what? There's plenty of options over at Sister Teresa's house or Sister Teresa's store. If Billy Joe Bob and them do not want me in their restaurant, I needed to be fine with that. But what happened was we went overboard with the fight. If I can't drink from your drinking fountain, the water tastes just as good at my drinking fountain. If the conditions of my drinking fountain or of my restroom are not taken care of, guess what? I am very much capable of cleaning my own doggone toilet. It was like we got to the point where it's like, okay, nothing that we did was good enough anymore if we couldn't do it with everybody else. If you don't want me to come to your party, I throw my own doggone party. I dance better anyway. And I know the people that I got, they sing better. So what we tripping for? And that was the problem with integration. Because now what comes with integration is we now start taking on habits, philosophies, thought processes of other people. And a lot of their stuff don't be in line with the Torah. It don't be in line with the Most High. And the Most High is like, you forgot my laws. You forgot my statutes. You forgot my judgment. So now you see us today. Now you see us today. Now we okay with junk. And I'm being real clean about what I say because I really want to say it how I want to say it. But now we being okay with stuff that when you look at the Torah, the Most High say, I hate that. It's an abomination. But we going in and we voting for it and saying, that's my truth. That's my right. This is my, and the Most High is like, but you forgetting me. And if you forget me, you lining yourself up according to Malachi 4 verse 6 for destruction. So now what I got to do is I got to turn the hearts of the Father. And I'm telling the fathers to step up and be priests and teach your children. Listen, I'm not saying hate everybody. I'm not saying go out and kill and accost people. That ain't what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you don't feel welcome, what the king say? Take the dust off your feet and take your peace with you. The nations of this world should be blessed. Why? Because we there. Everything we do, we make it thrive. We make it boom. We make it pop. We didn't start basketball. I think they did with the peach basket and stuff in Indiana. They was tossing the ball up underhanded and everything else. Well, we darn sure elevated that jump. They won't put one of us on as the NBA logo, but you best believe the reason why that game is making the money that it's making is because them brothers is out there and them brothers that can jump over the backboard and shoot from half court and dribble like no other. We made the game pop. Football, we made the game pop. My coach in New York knew where to come. He came to our neighborhood with his red Corvette, and he was looking for the brothers. We didn't invent football, but we darn sure knew how to play that junk. We made the game pop. Music, all of that. Anything that we hit, we make it pop. So why do we feel the need that if somebody tell us no, all of a sudden we can't function? We can't do this. We can't do that. No, the word says, greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. Who is your God? Why do I have to acquiesce and try to fit in. And that's what integration did. Because now I got to dumb myself down, tone myself down, let you dictate the terms of the engagement, let you tell me what manners are, let you tell me what professionalism is, and everything goes, or what looks good. You know what? If I grow my hair out and it blocks up, my hair is still fine and beautiful. I don't need to keep it short just because you demand that it be short, or now I got to shave my beard because that's what you say is professional. I can keep a beard, I can get locks, and it still be professional. Why? Because it's not the outside, it's the character. But that's what integration did. That nothing that we did was good enough. Nothing that we said was good enough. I wish my brother Jay was on here. He has some good stuff about that. And maybe it's something that we will revisit. Because I wanted to talk about the difference between desegregation and integration. Because desegregation, we're just asking for equality. And that's what the ancestors had. After slavery, we left with nothing. Now, according to Torah, this is the beauty of Torah. If you had a slave, a Hebrew slave or Israelite slave, and you let them go, the Bible says that you let them go with much provision. So in other words, if somebody was serving me, an Israelite was serving me, and he's serving me for the 6 years, because we understand the 7th year Jubilee, all debt is forgiven. When I let that Israelite brother, sister go, guess what was supposed to happen? Not only do I send them away, but I send them away with enough provision where they can start over. We ain't talking religion. We talking function. We were supposed to be able to start over. Now, ask the ancestors. Like when you talk about the 13th Amendment, that was used to fund the prison system. Because now brothers that were free from slavery, guess what they didn't have? They didn't have provision. They didn't have land. They didn't have nothing to start their own job. So what did they do? They had to go back and work for the master that they just got free from the Emancipation Proclamation and all that. You know, when slavery was over, we had the Juneteenth. Shout out to Juneteenth. I don't really get into it, but I just shouting it out just to be silly. But with that being said, that's what happened. So now instead of outright slavery, now we had the prison industrial system, and that's how they was getting their money that way. That's how they're getting their service that way. And that's something that legally, quote unquote, continued even to today, which is why when people talk about the disproportionate crime and all this other nonsense, that's bull crap in my eyes. And the reason why that's bull crap in my eyes is because we know that that was done to replace the slave system that was already lost. Stop playing. The 13th Amendment was diabolical. Now, I'm not sitting here saying, let's pick up arms and riot and all that. That ain't what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you talk about the family. What happened after slavery, despite the fact that they had to deal with that 13th Amendment nonsense and all that nonsense they dealt with, guess what still stayed intact? The family. The father was still trying to figure it out. The father was still trying to make it work for his family. The father was still present in the home. And the mothers were still holding it down, holding the kids down. And it was a struggle, but the family was together. That's what was happening. They're getting lynched. Opportunities are denied, but we still have thriving so-called Black communities. Because what did they do? They looked within, and the money served. If you didn't want my service, if you didn't want my talent, my gift, that's fine. I go amongst my people and I will build. And I didn't discriminate against you. You still could come in, Master or Mr. Reynolds or whoever, you still could come in and benefit from my services. You still could come and shop and get some milk. You still could come and shop and get some of our textile. You still could come and shop and get some of my grandmother's pie. But at the same time, our money stayed in our community. And it's interesting because everybody else do it. But when we talk about it as so-called Black people, it's looked at as this racial thing. But you got the small caps. They got their own police force, their own educational system and everything. Little China ain't called Little China for no reason. When I worked at this high school up in California, I serviced some East Indian kids. They over in California, but they understood their culture. They understood their mannerisms. They understood certain ways in which they move. And it was not looked at as racial. There are little communities everywhere. Everywhere. In California, they got this place called Little Saigon. And any services or anything that they need in that community, in the Asian community, they keep it in-house. If they got issues and problems, they don't make everybody that they get issues and problems, they deal with them in-house. That used to be us. That's what our people used. Hey, if you didn't want to play ball with me, fine. I'll go play ball with my brothers. That was the crazy part. When you talk about even the Negro League. You didn't want the brothers to play big. Guess what? All the talented brothers, they be in the Negro League and they be balling. The baseball was it but the National Baseball, I forget what they call it. I don't know if the acronym for it. They benefited by integration. When Jackie Robinson came over, they benefited because we elevated the game. But we was too busy trying to fit in. And if we kept our talent in, that league would have thrived. They would have had to find a way to do what they normally do, destroy it. HBCUs, same thing. We literally, you see my HBCU maroon right there, Central State. We literally deal with a matter every year, the fact that Wright State University exists. Two state-funded institutions are not allowed to exist in the same county. You got Central State, who was there first, and Wright State, who came later. And they've been trying to shut Central State down since we've been there. My brother went there. My sister Cheryl went there. We know. They try to close our school down all the time. They're trying to find a reason to close it down now. And we receive less funding than elementary schools. But Wright State get the money that we're supposed to be getting, and it's illegal. Wright State should not exist. But you know what we didn't do at Central? We made use of what we had. We had a good time. We invested in one another emotionally. We made extra money. We threw our own parties on our campus. We invested in us. We would go to the store that's called Fulmer's. Them people didn't want us there. They didn't want us there. Fine, we threw our own parties. We literally in the middle of nowhere. We threw our own parties, we raised our own money, and we had a good time. To the point, the other schools, University of Dayton, Wright State, all them schools that was around, people coming from Bowling Green, guess where they came? Ohio State, coming to kick it at Central State. I almost got in a fight with a couple of linebackers from there, so I know I met them. So different story. I digress. But what I'm saying is, yes, but we made it work. Central State and Wilberforce, we made it work. If you didn't want us at your schools, that's fine. We go where we accepted that. That needs to be our mentality. You afford me the right to get an education, I take advantage of it. If you're going to deny me education, that's where the problem is at. But you say pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. If I'm taking the necessary steps to do that, get out of my way then. But I'm saying to us as a people, stop looking for them to fix us. The fixing of us is with our Elohim. And he said, yo, remember my laws. Remember my statutes. Remember my commandments. Remember my way. Fathers, teach these to your children. Raise them up in the nurture and the admonition of who? The Most High, the Lord. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be teaching our kids this way. That's why our kids are so adept at twerking and everything else, because we're not teaching them the way. And he said, you will not be a priest unto me, and I will forget your kids. And our kids are a byproduct of that. But that's my understanding of desegregation and integration. Listen, when they talk about they cutting this and that, we need to get out of the mindset of panic. My brother brought a verse. Matter of fact, let me go pull it up. He brought a verse to my attention, and I live by it to this day. Every time I hear some foolishness, I live by it. Let me grab the verse before I share my screen. But this Isaiah 30, shout out to my Moray, my brother, man. Yo, if you need a precept or verse, man, yo, holla at him, man. I'm telling you, he stayed loaded. With that being said, let me share my screen. Isaiah 30, verses 1 through 3. Share screen. Boom. This is what it said, yo. Here's what it said. So we start out getting blazed in the beginning, yo. It's crazy. It says, woe to the rebellious children, declares the Most High, declares Yahweh, who execute counsel. What we teaching? Executing counsel. What you teaching? But he said it ain't his. We executing counsel, but it ain't his. And make alliances. So we making covenants, but not of his spirit, in order to add sin to sin. This is what we're doing. That's integration, yo. That's integration. You know what's interesting? When the ancestors came into Egypt the first time, when Joseph brought his dad in them, he put them in Goshen on purpose, said, yo, tell them you sheep herders. And the thing about it was, when they said that they're sheep herders, Egyptians looked down on sheep herders. They thought they were an abomination. They didn't want anything to do with the Israelites because they were sheep herders. And so a lot of times when people assume or insinuate that there was a whole bunch of mixing going on between, there may have been, but you can't really make that assumption, because the lifestyle that the Most High was leading us in, when you talk about being having sheep and everything else, the lifestyle that the Most High had us living, the Egyptians thought was an abomination. In other words, they wanted to do with us. And Joseph told them to tell them that on purpose, by design, to keep us separate. Even though we in Egypt, to keep us separate. So now when we look at this verse and it says, woe to the rebellious children, declares Yahweh, who execute counsel, but not mine, then whose counsel we executing? Got to be the people who are influencing us, that the government that we're currently under. And make alliances or covenants, but not of my spirit, in order to add sin to sin. Verse 2 says, who go down to Egypt, place that has you in captivity, has you in bondage, so to speak, but not ask me, but did not ask me to find strength in strong defense of Pharaoh, and to take refuge in the shadow of Egypt. In other words, I prefer to live under the protection of Egypt rather than the Most High. But he said, come to my laws, statutes, and commandments. You still bound to be under my government, my way. Verse 3, therefore, the strong defense of Pharaoh will be your shame, and the refuge of the shadow of Egypt, your dishonor. Look at the state of us as a people today. We have rejected the laws of the Most High. We have rejected the government that the Most High has given us. The word says, a nation that forgets his God shall be turned into Sheol, hell. What do you see on social media all the time? Hell. Why? Because we integrated. And that was the backlash of the civil rights laws. It was one thing to want equity. In other words, I just want the right that if you're saying pull myself up by my own bootstraps, don't destroy my work. I demand protection of my work under your laws. Protect my business like you will protect your own business. The National Guard should be on standby to protect my company like you would protect the companies in Beverly Hills and all the other rich neighborhoods. The police should protect my business like they protect these other businesses. And not only that, but they should protect the businesses from people who don't share my skin color. That's not what was happening. We got whole cities that were built that are now lakes. Lakes. They turned them into lakes. Areas that were purposely gentrified on purpose, sold low to buy high or to sell high. I mean, bought low to sell high. So they go and they kick the people out of the neighborhoods, put business and commerce there, and now they make it, they sell high. They did this place where I grew up out of New York, this place called Wyandanch. It don't even look the same. People have moved the people out of that area, moved the people out of that way after all the predatory practices or predatory businesses came through. Once all those came through, now what they did was they moved all those predatory businesses out, and now they got other businesses there. We need to get to the point where we put police or people need permission, or we begin to support the businesses of people that look like us, because I promise you, the Asian community will not let me set up, or my sister Kia, who's an excellent cook, she will not be able to set up her restaurant in their neighborhood. I would not be able to set up any business endeavor that I would want to do in the area of the small caps. But yet other people will come over and actually get monies and funding and subsidy to set up businesses in our area. So every time they come, every dollar that we get, we support these businesses, they do not stay in our community. That's what integration did to us. Now, I will say this to my people. You black-owned business, do right. There be some black-owned businesses that be on some nonsense. Have your people do correct service. Be excellent. My sister Kia gave us a sample of what she would do with her fine dining restaurant, her portions and everything like that. One thing that she had on point was the presentation of the food and the service. One thing that I will say this about us, if you gonna have a business and you gonna have a business of service, be excellent with that. Hire some people that got your spirit. If they're gonna have equity, if we're gonna move in an area of desegregation where there's equal opportunity, and there is opportunity for small businesses, for us to have our own LLCs and us to build our economic structure after we get our families back together. If there is money to do that, be excellent with the business that you build. Don't cut corners. Don't half-step. Be great with what you do. The word talks about that our gifts should make room for us and have us seated among great men. And it would be the people that, as we move in an excellent way, an excellent spirit, that even people that are of other nations will want to come and partake in sample of your goods. And we didn't have to integrate. And we didn't have to force our way on nobody. Shout out to my man G. Judah is black back. Shout out to my man G Youngblood. That's a brother from home. That's one of our big brothers, man. Love you. Love you, bro. Love you. Be excellent. There's opportunity here. Listen, if they're cutting this, if they're cutting that, if they're cutting housing programs and all this stuff, the word says, greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. Do you have the Most High in you? And if he be in you, be excellent. There's plenty enough in us that with the current government structure, start your own stuff. Get yourself in position to be able to barter, to be able to trade, to be able to connect with other people, and we go back to exchanging the goods and services. Everything didn't have to be through currency. Shalom to my dear sister, Sister Miriam, the songbird, the other songbird. Shalom. Everything was not from a capitalistic standpoint where it was cash. If you had something I need and I had something you need, we traded, we bartered. This is what we did. I'm just saying we don't have to be dependent upon a government that if they take the rug out from one of us, we don't be like, what I'm gonna do? Support, build. Jeremiah, I think it's 3. I think it's 3. The verse that says plant, I think it might be Jeremiah 5:29 or something to that. I'm messing it up. I know it's Jeremiah. I don't have the book, chapter, and verse in front of me, but it says plant gardens. Have your children be married, that your numbers be not decreased. Plant your gardens. What is your garden? It could be a literal garden, yes. Shout out to my man G Youngblood in the chat. He got his own truck. I hope you don't mind me putting that out, big homie. I'm bigger than him, but he's our big brother. He has his own trucking business. If you need to get in contact with him, I'll connect you with him. And he got a nice truck too. I think he still might have it. If you don't, I'm sure he got some other stuff going on. But we can support one another. And the truck that he had, it wasn't shabby. That was a legit truck. We're talking about desegregation versus integration. Shout out to my sister Miriam. She do tassels, fringes. She make dope t-shirts. Good quality. You need some Israelite gear? Holla at her. You have a few extra dollars? Holla at her. We don't got to support Versace and all these other people. We ain't got to support them. A lot of them don't even want our money anyway like that. But Sister Miriam, that dear sister, connect with her. You need, and the shirts that she make, the stuff don't come off after a few washes and all that. No, the stuff that we got, the Matthew 25, the verses that we got, guess what? They still on our shirts. And we do laundry here. We do wash clothes where we at. Guess what? That Matthew 25 was still on the back. My brother got some dope t-shirts from her. She in the chat right there. I'm gonna put it up. Yes, hit that sister up. You need some Israelite gear. Support. Listen, I'm not talking black supremacy. I'm talking responsibility. The word says when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. When Solomon was in rule, when our kingdom was at the peak, every nation was coming by sampling the goods. It benefited. And Solomon had peace. But Solomon was moving in wisdom. And he's taking care of the business of the nation. We were thriving as a nation. We were thriving as a people. We wasn't in war. The fame of Israel spread because of the obedience that we was walking in through David and Solomon's reign. We got to keeping them laws, statutes, and commandments. And when the Father would look at us as a nation, he didn't see iniquity. He saw a reflection of himself. And then on top of that, guess what? Even other nations, they was coming to sample the wisdom. Yo, how y'all do that? Man, can we get in with that? And depending on what it was what it was. But we were very much loving people. And people were blessing us. They were giving their goods because of the wisdom that they was getting. Solomon didn't have to go out and force anything that we believed on anybody. But when they came, shout out to my man, my classmate Chris, when they came and they wanted to know the wisdom of the Most High, guess what Solomon did? Shared it. Isaiah said, the nations will cleave to you because of your God. The nations will cleave to you because of your God. That's why the word is plain. Right, when the righteous rule, the people will rejoice. Why? Because there's a righteous rule. The true people of the Most High, the sons of God, the sons and daughters of the Most High, they're not going to exploit. But I got off on a tangent, forgive me. We're talking about desegregation and integration. The purpose of desegregation was for there to be equity. Take advantage of the current system. Take advantage of the equity that you have now to start your own business. And be excellent at what you do. What you got in you is plenty good enough. It's plenty good enough. With that being said, is there any questions in the chat? Any thoughts? Any feedback? I see if this will go further. I don't know if my brother JP want to come back and, flush this out a little bit more. The title was specifically tailored to a comment that he made, but I hope that with the best of what I understood from my conversations with him, not only that, with the current system that's in place and my understanding of the scriptures, with the God that we serve, we don't have to fret if people are making cuts. We just got to obey him. He said, plant gardens. So plant your garden. If you got an artistic talent, use it. You can sing. Write some music. Build your stuff. Stop waiting for someone else to do it for you. If they're saying pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, by the power of the Most High, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. He said, greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. Who you serve. That being said, is the pesky one. Your little brother, Yehukanan Ben Yah. I see nobody in the chat. I see thank yous and amens. I believe that all hearts and minds are clear. With that being said, it is the pesky one. I want to thank you for joining me. Shout out to my brother, Mama Ray, Eugene Copeland Jr., who gives me license to get up here and do what I do and act up how I act up. With that being said, I hope you all learned something. I hope I said something that brought edification. I hope I said something that makes some sense. This is a Taking a Deeper Look channel. We kind of just try to look at stuff and look beyond. There it is, Sister Tracy, 29 and 5. I had it backwards, 5 and 29. Thank you, Sister Tracy, for getting that. Yes. Yes, man. Good God. Yeah, I couldn't remember that. I couldn't remember what it was at, but I knew it was in Jeremiah. Sorry. She put the verse in the chat. Plant the garden. Have your children be married, that your numbers be not decreased. I'm in the book. I know I'm in the book. So I would never make up something that I ain't gonna make it up. If it's in that book, I know it's in that book. With that being said, I thank you all for joining us. And thank you all for your comments in the chat. Again, like I said, I hope that something said to edify you. Again, bless you, Chris, my man. Like I said, that's one of my high school schoolmates. We went to high school together, and he's always a good dude, good friend for years, man. And we reconnected on Facebook. So all praise to the Most High for Chris Coonan showing up. Again, if you have any questions, anything I need to clear up, hit me up even in inbox or on Facebook. I don't mind talking, bringing edification. If there was something I said that you wanted further understanding on, please let me know. Again, I'm not talking Israelite supremacy. I'm talking Israelite responsibility. Because when we do what we're supposed to do, the nations will bless our God. We got to do what we're supposed to do. That being said, it's the pesky one, your brother Yukonan Binyah. I love you all. Get some rest. We look forward to having you for Shabbat. For those that fellowship Chasers of the Way. If you fellowship elsewhere, go ahead and fellowship and learn of the Most High. Learn of the Most High. That need to be what we need to learn in these Shabbats. Learning the Most High. If you don't have a place where you fellowshipping, come in here. Every now and then I teach often, but really I want you to come here, my brother. Really want you to come here, my brother. He on some stuff, y'all. And I'm not talking about drugs. I'm talking about some of the stuff that brother be teaching. I mean, he going into the mountains. You know, he meeting at the Transfiguration. And I'm saying that brother right there been coming down with some stuff. So that being said, if you want to learn something of the Most High, if you want to learn something, I ain't saying you ain't learning nowhere else. I'm just saying what we eating over here, you need to be prepared. He ain't serving up milk. He's not serving up milk. He is serving up some good eats. I just put it like that. He don't say that. I'm saying it. That's a humble brother. He won't say it. He won't ever say it. But I will say it. And I'm not a liar. So if I'm saying it, then you know you can take it to the bank. Being that said, I love you all. Get some rest. Shalom, shalom.